my goodness. Oh, and they're playing Janet Jackson. Wow. Oh, thank you. Oh, and they're playing Janet. Y'all know I like Janet. I didn't bring my black suit today to do Rhythm Nation. Good evening. I'm so used to saying good morning, so I feel cool when I say good evening.
Well, this is going to be more than a book celebration. We got Janet, and I think we should do one more thing before we start.
What's that?
Maybe say happy birthday.
Aww, yay, thank you. Thank you.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, really?
Oh, we're going to sing, honey.
Yay. Oh, they giving y'all verse 1, 2, and 3? Okay.
I thought we was going to fast forward, but it's okay. It's okay.
Look, he's like, oops, he started too far in. Oh, this is so embarrassing.
No, we're going to celebrate you. Book celebration, birthday celebration, all of the above.
Okay, while we wait for the chorus, thank you guys so much for coming. This is like surreal for me.
Here it comes. Happy birthday to ya.
So
Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday.
There we go. Yay! Thank you. Wow. Can I tell you guys something? Before the book was even finished, I dreamed of being right here. Ryan will tell you, who works here at the library. I'm working on this book. He said, well, when you get it finished, you should come to DC. And I was like, so this was my first yes when I was still typing. So this is surreal. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
You know, I have so many questions for you, and I know the audience does too. So I won't, you all have been waiting patiently. We're going to jump right into it.
Okay.
This book is so much. It shows your reflection, it shares your story, but I want to get to the origin. What was the beginning of creating this book, and why did you feel like it was so important in this moment?
That's a good question. So, I was at Fox Philly for a while, but when you get a job at the Today Show, you're like, Mama, I made it, So I remember getting to the Today Show and thinking like, okay, I'm all set. But then you look and Carson Daly's doing The Voice and he was TRL. And then you look at Jenna and she's a Bush. And then Hoda, and then Hoda is Hoda. She's one name, And so very quickly you realize, okay, the Today Show is great, but who are you? What are you going to contribute? And so I heard this quote the other day, you take your truth and then you wrap your purpose around it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've always loved children. In fact, when I was in my early days at the Today Show, I was mentoring a lot of the pages, the folks in the Navy Blue Blazers. And one day, one of the girls was at my house. I hope that's allowed. Well, statute of limitations, it was 10 years ago. But anyway, she was at my house. And she said, Sheinelle, you're always helping us with your hopes and dreams. What would you want to do? Yeah. And I said, honestly, and at the time, I should say, I moved to New York City with 2 triple strollers and 2 double strollers. My twins were 2 and my oldest was 5. It was nuts. And I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning. I was exhausted. I was like the little rookie at the Today Show. So when she asked me, what I would want to do, I said, gosh, when those celebrities come through, when everybody else is looking at the celebrity, I just want to interview their mother. I'm like, what did she feed them, And there were certain celebrities that grabbed my attention. I'll tell you a little something because y'all are special. It will be the A-listers of the world, right? The Steph Currys and Meryl Streeps. They'll come in, and when no one is watching, they're kind to everyone. They talk to the people outside holding the signs. They're just so, when no one is looking. It'll be like the Z.2 lister that'll come in and ask for 6 Skittles or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But the really kind ones, Steph Curry was an example where I remember one day watching him when no one else was watching. He went outside, and he's high-fiving the kids and signing autographs, and I literally thought, God, I would love to just talk to his mother. And so we did it. And Steph Curry's mom, Sonia, was my first yes. And I flew to her house. It was in 2018. I think I missed my flight twice. I sat on her couch, and we talked about everything. I remember I've talked about it on the show where she said that, there was a big 8th grade game, and she ran a Montessori school. They went to her school, an hour and a half trek every day. They would pray before school and then drive an hour and a half with her in the car. And he had a big 8th grade game. I think it was his first game of the season. And his dad was in the NBA, so people thought, oh, this is Steph Curry. He didn't get to play, and he had to tell his coach he couldn't play because he didn't do his chores the night before. And I was sitting there thinking, did my mama call you? Because she thinks I'm too soft. And, you know, I have 2 boys who play soccer. I probably would have said, oh, you know, it's okay. So I went home like, that's it. Steph has chores. Y'all have chores. But I bring that up because I remember she took me to, at the time, his high school bedroom was still intact. He had trophies everywhere. He had this poster of Shaq. And I was like, wow. And then he ended up playing with them. I think long before we had vision boards, we had high school bedrooms.
Yep.
You know, and I had Janet Jackson on one wall and Tevin Campbell. I had all the news anchors on one wall. I took the high school Falcon from homecoming, and now I can't get in trouble for it, and it was hanging on my ceiling. You know, and so I think what you think about, you bring about. And after that first interview, I was sold. And then Shaq's mom, and then Kevin Durant's mom, Wanda, and then Lady Gaga, and Lin Manuel Miranda, and Venus and Serena Williams, and Thomas Rhett. They just kept coming, and they were more than willing to sit down with me and share with you ultimately, you know, about their journeys.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you talk to all those amazing mothers, but you also weave your beautiful voice into this. Yeah. And there's a moment where, I started to cry because I had a very similar experience where you're holding your daughter, she's brand spanking new, you're walking down the steps, and something happens.
I fell down the stairs.
You fell down the stairs.
With her. So the twins were tiny, maybe 2 months. I was on maternity leave. I feel bad. I'm like, where was Kyan? I'm not sure. Like, I don't know where my 3-year-old was. I don't know, he's playing in the dryer. No, I'm just kidding. Because at the time, I was by myself. And I remember I was holding Claire like this. And I had socks on. And I remember my little guy was at the bottom of the stairs. And you know when you have a baby, you just try to put him in things.
Right.
So one was in a chair and one was here, you know. So I was holding her, not paying attention. And I was going down the steps to go to the basement. And next thing you know, boom. And I'm boom, 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 boom. All the way to the bottom of the stairs. And I was like, oh, my God. And then I opened my eyes. And she was like, yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. But in that moment, I was like, what was that? What was more important? The laundry, emails, slow down, Sheinelle. Be mindful. And I really, after that, have tried to.
And I'm going to read your words back to you because in the opening, again, there's so much to relate to in this book, but you say...
Oh my gosh, she's so prepared. She has like tabs and stuff. That's how you know
tabs.
She's a real, reader.
You know? You say this is what this book is about, giving ourselves the grace as mothers to admit that we don't know, seek the help we need, forgive ourselves for our missteps and limitations, learn from each other, and embrace the fullness of our journeys. The blessings, the victories, the stumbles, the tumbles, the imprints, even the bruises falling down those stairs that they leave behind. This book honors all of it, and it also honors you wherever you are in your motherhood journey. Honey, when I say I was crying, yeah, I was like, my son is 6 right now, and I know there's so many mothers in this room that can relate. And mothering is more than one thing, right? It's aunties, it's your sorority sisters, it's everyone in this room that shows up for young people. And I just appreciate how you, whether you're a celebrity or a normal, everyday person, this book speaks to that. And I just really want to commend you for collecting these stories and these lessons from your grandmama, from everyone that you've touched, and sharing it with us. So thank you again.
Thank you. Sweet.
So you mentioned Steph, but you know who my girl was.
Who?
Wanda. Okay.
My kids thought it was so cool that I had a launch party and she came and he was like, I took a picture of Miss Wanda.
You know, Kevin Durant's mom, she does not play.
Yeah, she was great.
So can you talk about, there's a moment when she is discussing how she was hiding, you know, so she had spent so much time cultivating this journey for her sons, making sure they're doing well, showing up, being good men. But in the background, she wasn't showing up for Wanda.
I thought that was so interesting. I had never heard someone say they were hiding behind their kids, but it certainly makes sense, right? We pour so much into our kids that we don't care who we are. We just want them to be the best they can be. Yeah. But when you do that year after year after year, so many of the women talked about the fact that they wish they would have showed up for themselves a little bit sooner. There was so much about her story that I related to. Little did I know I would ultimately be a single mom. I didn't know that at the time. But she talked about how it was so important to be present and be an advocate for her boys. For example, I'm petite. I'm 4'11". So picture day, I'm always in the front or sitting on the floor, you know? And apparently, you know, a lot of these basketball players, a lot of these tall guys, they're great now, but they were self-conscious back in the day. And she went up to the school and said, I need you to put my kid in the front. Next time y'all go to recess or whatever, put my tall son in the front. And I never thought about that, but the teacher did. And he came home like, you know, a little happier just because for once he wasn't always in the back. Little things like that, you know. She talked about, you know, on the sad days where they went to bed hungry. And Kevin has talked about the fact that he remembers nights where he knows that she didn't get to eat, but she gave them all the food, and then she would just, she was working at the post office at the time, so she would get up the next morning and just eat at the post office. And I sat there in her beautiful place, in all of its splendor, and thought, you know what? People need to hear this, because if you are reading this in the moment and you're hungry, or you're a single mom and you're struggling, just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I will share with you, we're gonna get to it, but when I was writing this, Uche got diagnosed with brain cancer, and we'll talk about it, but I remember, he wanted me to keep writing, and as I was writing some of these chapters, because I had to finish it up, it was like it was ministering all over to me again. Yeah. So when Wanda was talking about, I may be on my own, but I'm strong, and I was resilient, and I was fierce, and I was this, I was that, it was almost like she was ministering to me in a way that I never knew I would need.
Yeah. When we think about the lessons that you got from this book, is there one that you're holding on in particular, especially with what has happened, most recently with Uche and just the transition with your family?
Yeah, a couple of them. One, Rob Gronkowski's mom, Gronk, as they call him.
Can you tell them the chapter of the book, the heading?
Half a cow. Because here's the thing. I'll take half a cow. She had 5 boys, she and her husband. All 5 of them played professional sports, 4 in the NFL and 1 in Major League Baseball. The odds, we looked it up, the odds of having all of your kids, all 5 boys, play professional sports, you have a greater chance of being struck by lightning. So I was like, let me hear what she has to say.
Right.
And I'm always joking, what did you feed them? And she said, well, I would get half a cow. And I'm like, no, she was serious. I don't even know, I don't cook, so did she dice it up? I don't know what you do with half a cow. But you put it in the freezer, I don't know. Right. And she would go to the grocery store, and she would have these 2 carts, and one boy, the boys would push one and push the other. And she talked about how when she, had the boys, and when she was pregnant, and she would go to the hospital, she would have all the meals lined up and tell her husband, what clothes to wear, all the things, right? And I said, gosh, and you know what I casually said? I said, gosh, I just can't wait until I can just, I don't know, take a shower and nobody opens the door, And she laughed, and then she said, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah.
She's like, you're gonna miss that pitter patter, And she started crying. And I sat there, and it was such sweet tears, and it caught me off guard, and I realized if we're not careful, I flew home, and I was thinking to myself, when we're in the diaper phase, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for these kids to get out of these diapers. And then when you're in my phase, and you have these moody teenagers, you're like, if they don't sit down, But if you're not careful, you wish it away. Yeah. And some of you guys know who are empty nesters, before you know it, they're out of the house. Yeah. This past Easter, I was like, I only have 2 Easters left with my oldest. Yeah. And so I think, what do they say? The days are long, what is it? The years are long, the days are short, one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That. Because it's true. Yeah. It's true. And so I really do. I try to remember that. And if anybody has learned that more than anyone, it's me, if anybody has learned that. Because, tomorrow is not promised. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard sometimes, because it's tough. Parenting is tough. And what I have learned is that when the days get hard, motherhood doesn't stop. Yeah. If anything, the volume is turned up a bit.
Yeah. Some of the, the list of names in this book.
I know. You could give me a mom, and I can tell you.
Yep. So I was thinking about Lin Manuel and also Lady Gaga's mother. Mm-hmm. And with Lady Gaga's mother, the whole bullying thing, there are so many things that, I felt like as I was reading, I was taking notes. So my son is 6 right now, so I'm not at that phase yet. But it's like you want to take, put a footnote, okay, when this happens, how can I be prepared? Can you share about just, all the advice that she offered?
Yes.
So, especially when your child is trying to find who they are, understand identity and belonging. She offered so many great tips.
There were a couple of takeaways I took from Cynthia Germanata, Lady Gaga's mom, aka Steffi, as she calls her. When she was little, the one part I will say is a lot of these, I was trying to find a common thread if I could. A lot of these women, there were distinct moments where I felt like they leaned into their child's talent. And there was a story when Gaga was tiny and was banging on a piano. How many of us would be like, I know my folks would be like, I'm gonna take that piano and throw it out the window, right. Banging on the piano. And at one point she said, should we get you lessons? Yeah. And she was like, but I already know how to play. That little confidence. And she never, you don't want to blow out your child's candle. You know what I mean? So she nurtured that. And so things were great. It's so interesting because I think she lived across the street from Al Roker back in the day. Because he said he remembered her going to music lessons. Yep. Random fact. But anyway, I think it was around 8th grade where she was thrown into a dumpster. Yeah. And Gaga's grades were good, so it wasn't just grades. And so what I appreciate about Cynthia is that she was honest about it and said it was a regret that she had. You know, all of the women, they were not afraid to say, I would have done this differently. You know, Sonya Curry says she felt like she was too strict. And that she was so busy trying to be a disciplinarian that she kind of just missed the softer side. You know, I appreciate that she said that. And you know, Gronk's mom said she missed it. And so with Gaga's mom, she said she felt like she didn't see the signs. And so in the book, she goes through some of those signs. And then they ended up starting a foundation, the Born This Way Foundation, to combat it. So it's like, you know what, I felt like I missed it with my child, but I'm gonna try to make sure that this doesn't happen to other kids. I really appreciated that.
Yeah. And so I want to weave your story more in this, because you talk so lovely about your experience. And there was a moment where you were trying to leave honors class.
Oh my goodness.
And your grandma said, no, Sheinelle.
So that's funny. So here's the story. So when I was in middle school, I was in advanced English.
Are we surprised, though? Of course.
I was in advanced English, and I remember, but I was in a public school, it was overcrowded. And I remember, or it was just, at least the English class was crowded. And I remember the principal coming in and taking volunteers to go to an easier class. I was like, so I raised my hand, and I was like, I'm gonna go be with my friend Jamie and Jermaine and Antoine. I'm going to the fun class. And it was fun. And then I remember randomly that day, my grandmother picked me up from school. My grandmother, Josephine Brown, was the first woman of color on the school board in my hometown. So growing up, she was always in education on the school board. And she picked me up that day in her Lincoln Continental. And she was listening to Lou Rawls, and I was in the back seat just yapping like always. And I remember her turning the music down, and she said, what are you talking about? I said, I had so much fun today. I volunteered to go to the easier class. It was so easy. It was so much fun. And like, as I was talking, I didn't notice that the car was turning around. And then next thing you know, we're pulling back up into Brooks Middle School. She walks me into the office, and I'm like, what's happening? I don't understand what's happening. And then she goes into the lobby, and she's like, into the office, and she goes, where's Brenda? Now, I didn't know my principal's name was Brenda. I was like, Miss Moore? And she came out of the office, and she said, you know better. And the next day, I was learning about Beowulf again and Shakespeare. But I share that story because, one, it wasn't a mom, right? My mom was working. It was my grandmother, you know? And so she was able to be a bit more present. And thank God that day she was listening. How many times do we have our kids yapping in the back seat and we're not paying them any mind, or they get home and they want to say something, we just don't have the bandwidth because we're tired. I know I'm tired sometimes. But thank God that day that she was listening to me. You know, you could argue that perhaps being in advanced English in 7th grade changed the trajectory of my education. You know, I write for a living and speak. And I know, you know, I don't know if they still do it, but tracking in schools, it's real. You know, and so once you end up in those classes, it's a lot harder to switch over to AP or gifted and talented. And so I say that story just because if you have mom guilt because you're traveling or you're working and you can't be there, that's okay. I talk about how I remember one day I was watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood with the kids. I used to love it. And I think about it, you know, Mr. Rogers sometimes leaves and you have Lady Aberling or you have the mailman, you have other people who pour into your kids. And so it was my grandmother that day who poured into me.
Yeah, you all have the book and you're gonna enjoy it. There's some blank pages at the end where you can add your own motherly advice. But I highlighted all of this. So pretty is as pretty does.
Oh, this was Grandmama's advice.
Yes, she's my grandmother too.
Let me just say really quickly, I was very, very close to my grandmother. And I see pink and green in here. You guys know I was so that's the sound for our sorority. And, you know, my grandmother was, in it for 60, 70 years. And she was so excited about this book. And we were going to tour together. It was going to be me, my mom, and my grandma. And I sent her the book, and she was so excited about this book tour. And she ended up passing 7 months after Uche. Now, keep in mind, when I was writing this book, it was, while Uche was sick, but then I finished it, and it was supposed to come out last April. He passed on May 18th, and the book was supposed to come out April 14th. Yeah. And everybody kept saying, Sheinelle, you cannot have a book come out. And I promised him, I'm like, please, let me. And they were like, you can't tour. You can't go out and do this. You need to be with him. Mm-hmm. And it was the right thing to do. But then Grandmama ended up passing 7 months after Uche. Yeah. We certainly didn't see it coming. So the fact that I end this book with Grandmama's quotes, that was in 2 years, a year and a half before. Yeah. That's how I know this is bigger than me.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. her words and her energy, her sentiment is throughout this book, and your mother's too. You know, you were very candid about your experience being a child of divorce.
We were in the Black Brady Bunch growing up.
Yes.
One of my brothers is over here.
Oh, shout out
Hi,
to the brother.
woohoo! He was part of the Black Brady Bunch. I had you know how they have like Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. I had Keisha. I had it all. Yeah, but I talk about the fact that, you know, my mom's been divorced twice, and to this day, I have never heard her or my father ever say a negative word about the other. Never,
Yes.
never.
Yep.
And I know that's not easy.
Yep.
Never. They made a pact when they separated when I was a baby that they would never, one, talk to me about the other, and they both kept it, and I respect it so much. I remember interviewing Thomas Rhett's mom, Paige, and she and her husband did the same thing.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, I do play dates with my kids, and then I got to take this one over the dads, and then I have to wait till the mom, you know, all of that, and I watch the kid go back and forth, and my heart feels for them because I was that child, but I think we turned out okay, and I really think that is a part of it. Anyway, I digress.
No, I mean, it's just so beautiful because I think that's another part of this book that is so welcoming. You share so many different experiences of motherhood and what that can look like, and there's no stigma or shame, you know? It's like being a single mother, you know, is not a bad thing. And coming from a blended family is not a bad thing. Why was that essential for you to show all those different pathways of motherhood?
You know, I talked about on the show, Grandmama used to say all these things she would just be saying all the time. Now I take it and I'm like, oh, you know, and she says, honey, I'm doing the best I can with the light I have to see by.
Yes.
You know, and I say it now all the time, and she says it just in jest. And then she says it in real moments too, doing the best I can with the light I have to see by. In writing this book, I have so much more respect for my own mother. You know, I'll share with you, I interviewed Alma Wahlberg, you know, the matriarch of the Wahlbergs. And I remember walking up to her house and thinking, oh my gosh, if my middle school self knew I was walking up to New Kids on the Block's house, you know, the mom's house. And she's this big. She and Kay McConaughey were like the tiny moms with the biggest spunk, you know. And she had all of these loose leaf journals. And so another place where I missed my flight, because I ended up just talking to these women. And she, after we talked about the kids and all that, she said, you know, I really want people to know me. Yeah. And she said, because I want people to know that if times are tough, they can make it out. And she talked about how her mother, you know, she had a tough childhood. There was alcoholism. There were times where most of the time she didn't know if she was going to eat. And she would look at the stove, and if there was a pot on the stove, that meant that she was going to get dinner. And so she had this loose leaf journal and all these journal entries. And one of them talked about, you know, just to help them to know me, help them to know that they too can make it or whatever it is. And she asked me to take them. And I thought, oh God, no, I can't take them. And honestly, on the show, when we were doing the series on the air, you know, I knew we probably wouldn't put that on the show. And so I took some pictures of her journal entries and I said, you know, I'd see what I could do. And then she passed. And so as I was writing the chapter, I actually called Mark. And I said, hey, if you would feel comfortable with this, she'd asked me to share her story, and this page seems like it would be appropriate, you know, and so that's in the book as well. And so as I turned in that chapter, the lady I collaborated with, I would write a chapter and then send it to her, and write a chapter and then send it to her. And in that chapter, she said, didn't you say your own mother journals? And I was like, yeah, but this is not about me. And she said, no, call your mother and ask her about her journals. And so it was a Saturday morning. I called my mom, and she answers, hello. I said, Mom, you've been journaling since I was little. You take out the colored pencils and the colored pens, and she gets pretty books. She'll go and get journals, and she'll take a scripture or a magazine picture or a quote. I've seen her do it all my life and never thought anything of it. She wakes up to the moon and has been doing it every morning since I can remember. I said, why do you journal? And she said, well, I mean, I've been divorced twice. The third one we don't count. And she said, how do you think I'm okay? How do you think you're okay? She said I would get up in the morning, I'd pray about it, I'd put it in my journal, and I would leave it there.
Yes.
And I didn't have to bring it to you because I left it there.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I just never thought about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, Alma wanted to share her journals with her children and her great-grandchildren and for me to release it to the world. Would you want me to share your journals? Heavens, honey, no. Don't you look at my, what? Oh, burn them, honey, please, burn them. You know, so now I'm like, you know, no. But writing this caused me to realize, you look at other women and then you look at the women in your own family. And so as much as this book is about the X's and O's of parenting, sibling rivalry and chores and discipline and all that, it's also about us as women and these women and their resilience and their strength and their, Kay McConaughey, her humor. She was the oldest mom I talked to, and she was so spunky. She wanted to be in the Golden Girls. Mm-hmm. And she asked me if I knew a casting agent. And I'm like, your son is Matthew McConaughey. You're asking me? And she's like, honey, he doesn't take me seriously, but I know you will. Who do you know? And
Wait, at one point, wasn't she was like, and my daddy used to be the bodyguard for Al Capone.
Yes.
I was like, wait, what?
It was so much. She's so naughty. Like, she was naughty. I've said this before. If I put in everything that she told me, this book would be in a different section of the library. She was naughty. But there's something to say about the fact that the oldest mom, when I asked her what I need to keep in mind, and she says it's your humor. Because she also has been through a lot, and and you know what I mean? And the fact that in her 80s at the time, she was still dreaming, still wanted to be on the red carpet, still coming up with ideas. I love that.
She wrote a memoir that says, what is it? I Amaze Me.
Yes. So if you're gonna, if a woman in her 80s, upper 80s tells you to keep dreaming and keep pushing, then we should do it now.
Yes.
We should do it now.
Yeah. And so that reminds me of another quote that I absolutely love. So in between the book, as you're reading, you'll have these like Mama Said quotes from your coworkers. Al Roker wrote one. Hoda Kotb wrote one.
Cece Winans, Billie Jean King, Mario Lopez, Colin Jost.
They're just so sweet.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorites was Hoda's. She said, the secret to my mom's happiness is that she's constantly falling in love. She's falling in love with a new book, a new movie, a new restaurant, a new friend she met on the Amtrak train. That's what keeps mom young. She keeps falling in love over and over again. Of all the lessons she's ever taught me, that is by far the most important. And so I want to frame that to you. Like, what keeps you like still falling in love with just like all the experiences you're having in this new season?
That's a good question. You're good.
Oh, thanks.
That's a good question. I will share with you, my little guy came into the kitchen not too long ago, my 13-year-old. And he seemed like he was kind of in a mood. And he said, Mom, I kind of see things now in BCAD. And I said, yeah, you learned about that in school? And he goes, no, before cancer, after death. Oh, and I was like, whoa, and that's what I do. I said, yeah, I do too, buddy. And if you've been touched by cancer or an illness, like you're changed, And so I've talked about the fact that I really worried. I'm like, am I going to find my happy again? Am I going to find my joy again? Am I going to find my laughter again? But what I know now to be true is that you're almost in this club that you don't want to be in. But if there is any silver lining, which I don't even want to call it a silver lining, it's just you understand the fragility of life and that tomorrow isn't promised. And so everything feels beautiful. And I pride myself on trying to be mindful. I'm even more so now. So like in this moment, I am fully here. I'm so thankful that you are here. I have only wanted, even when I just had an idea about this book during COVID, and now here we are 6 years later, I had this dream of, do you know, you guys remember The Purpose-Driven Life?
Yes.
And like with Rick Warren, and we started talking about purpose, and then eventually it was wellness and all of these things. I want to talk about motherhood and people who nurture children, and I want to be like study the craft of it, the way somebody studies science. I want to study motherhood and have these conversations. And I dreamed of going into Sunday school classes and go back to Northwestern. This is beyond my wildest dreams to be able to sit and talk to you guys about this. And so I think I'm changed in that when I'm with you, I'm here. When I'm with the kids, I'm with them. In the morning when I'm with Jenna, I have the best time. And she is going to air tomorrow. She just interviewed for the 4 former presidents all together. And I'm able to say, and you interviewed your dad. What was that like? If you're not present, you're just, we have a good time, and then the show moves on. But no, I can be present in it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wish that this didn't have to happen to me. But so in my mind, I'm like, okay, then what can I think I've talked about this before, there's the woman I want to be, and there's the woman sometimes I feel like I am. Sometimes I just want to go home. Like yesterday, I was with one of our PR folks from the publisher, I couldn't stop crying yesterday morning. I didn't see it coming. I'd fortified myself for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Father's Day, like the holidays. But my birthday, I just didn't see it coming. You know, Uche used to throw these big surprise parties for me and parties. And so I remember sitting at the airport and just kind of tearing up, you know, and then when I got on the flight, I did a post about it because I had all these pictures from some of the places I've been. And that was the most responsive post I think I've had in more than a year because I was honest about it. And so now I don't run from it. The way I feel is the way I feel. If I'm having a tough morning, I'm having a tough morning. If I'm having a great time, I'm having a great time. If anybody watches Jen and Sheinelle, you know I'm a cage bird and I'm gonna be like 90 on a table one day. And so we found this place for me to go dancing on a table. I'm gonna dance on a table. I'm doing it. We may share it with you, we may not. No, I'm just kidding.
So we need behind the scenes with Sheinelle.
You know what? That makes me think of another thing because I feel so comfortable on stage with you, but I feel like we all feel that comfort because we watch you every morning. So, you know, so it's like we laugh with you, we grieve with you, we feel like we're growing with you in this season, and we're so proud of you. You know, like it's true. It's so true.
And we want to go dancing on that table, too.
I mean, it's like Jenna's like, you haven't danced on a table? I'm like, no. That's not something we just do.
So I guess my next question around that is because you're so open and you're vulnerable with your life, what happens when you're doing these interviews? How do you switch from the journalist and interviewer and then just the mother? Is it a separate practice or is it all one?
No, so what I've learned in the TV business when you travel, you know, you guys know I was in Springfield, Illinois, then Tulsa, you know, you work your way through the markets. Sometimes I'll go to a small city because I'm reporting, you know, or whatever, and I'll turn on local news and I'll see the reporter and I'm like, I know that when you've got your best blazer on and you're like, there's a fire right here on 4th Street and if you see right around there, you know. But then as you get older, by the time you get to where I am, there's a fire on 4th Street. I hope there's nobody in that, you know. Yeah. You don't have to play reporter anymore. You just are. You are enough, right? And so I don't have to play journalist anymore. I am. I'm curious. I approach things with wonder and awe. I love women. I love hearing their stories. And so I come as me, my whole self, and it's enough. I happen to be a journalist, and I happen to be all these things. But it's just Sheinelle having a conversation.
Another amazing story that I was very taken by, and I guess because I'm also a fan of all these basketball players, so I'm gonna keep going back to Lucille, Shaquille O'Neal's mother.
I left her house with some Shaq Easy Mac. She makes this mac and cheese. I was the coolest mom when I landed, and I said, Shaq's mom made y'all dinner tonight.
I love that. Can you share her experience? Because in her story, she talks about some pretty, difficult experiences, some vices that she had, and how she overcame that. When you were encountering those stories, can you tell us what that felt like, just parsing that out, and then being responsible for sharing that?
I was just about to say, when a woman shares her story, and for Lucille, I hadn't heard this before, but she struggled with alcoholism. Yeah. And she was able to hide it. And she talked about a game where it might have been one of his early games. And she had on sunglasses and nobody knew. And she said she remembers him looking up and he knew. And she knew that he knew. And she was like, I'm done. He's worked so hard. He's come so far. I don't want to mess this up for him. I don't want to embarrass him. I want him to be proud of me. Yeah. And she talked about it's never too late to pivot. If you look in the mirror and you don't like who you are, or there's something you want to do, change it, And she went and got her degree in her 40s, and now she travels and she speaks. I will tell you, when I was going through everything with Uche, she would send me scriptures and she would send me messages, and even now, nurturing me. And so she's a nurturer. And that's what I mean when I walked away with these women, or from these women, I'm like, okay, this is more than just the X's and O's of parenting. These women have a story to share.
Yeah. There's another part. I'm going to go back to another basketball mom. I promise I'll talk about the other moms too. But I'm thinking of Sonia, and there's a moment where you were talking about these 3 reactions. I feel liberated. I feel validated. I felt in awe of this woman because I never thought about my job of motherhood that way, or heard of anyone else say it so plainly. It made sense. Can you contextualize that moment for us?
Yes, because with 3 little ones, it was my husband at the time. I felt like I was doing everything. Like I didn't have, somebody doing laundry. I didn't have any of that stuff. I think my mom did it, so I do it. I did it, And she would say, we only work when all hands are on deck. I'm not gonna work all day and then come home and do the dishes and then take the trash out and then do the laundry, And I realized even when I was little, my mom, she did a lot. I look back, Clyde, do you remember the laundry we used to keep in the basement? It was like an unfinished basement. And me and my sister Melanie, we had one pair of skates. And I would get a skate and she would skate. And we'd be like, celebrate. And we would skate around the laundry. Like it never crossed my mind to maybe pick some up and put it in the wash. It was like our conduit to fun. We'd be like, let's skate around the reds. Let's go around the denim, And then we would be like, have the nerve to be like, Mom, are my jeans up yet? As if they would magically work their way up the stairs and into the drawer, But I look back now and I'm like, Mom, why didn't you tell us to do it? You know what I mean? So now looking at Sonia and she was like, or you're not playing.
Yep.
I was like, oh, whoa. So, and look, I tried to be that strict. I went to home and I went on Amazon and bought this chore board. This magnet that you put on the fridge, and I had each kid pick a color. You're green, you're red. I'm like, well, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And like after like 4 months, kind of was like, Mom, can you just take this off the fridge? You're not even enforcing it, So I can't say that I am the enforcer in chief, but I admired how I didn't know. Look, she didn't have to work.
Yeah.
Her husband played for the NBA at the time, but she ran a school and. The way, and you hear any of them talk about their mother, if you hear Steph talk about his mother and how she instilled faith, and that's another thing.
Yes.
All of them talked about, whether it was going on their knees or literally praying closets or trusting their faith, or faith was a huge piece of it. And I didn't set out I didn't know, but I realized it was certainly a theme for these women.
And in this moment, how has your faith been shaped by writing this book? Do you feel even more vulnerable? What is calling you to continue writing? Because we want more books. We want more of this.
I share a story at the beginning of the book. So I had the story, it was finished, and then when Uche passed, I felt like I couldn't put this book out into the world and write a book on motherhood and not be honest about the biggest jolt to my life and motherhood, right? And so I went back and wrote a little bit about it in the beginning and in the end. And after his very first brain surgery, he woke up and he was like, it was just the two of us in a room, and he was like, where's your laptop? And I was like, what? And he's like, where's your laptop? Come on. And I took it out because he wanted me to write this book and keep writing. And there would be days I can look at that book and tell you which chapters, where I was sitting next to him, and he would be in the hospital, and he would look over at me, and I would be typing with my chamomile tea, And so I promised him that I would finish it, And Uche's faith was a huge, huge part of his life. We had a friend who recently was an atheist, a really good friend of his, who just got baptized at church a few weekends ago, because he read a letter in church, and he said, it was Uche's fight. He was like, I want what he has, And so I felt like, look, I can't make this make sense, but his faith was so important to him. And if he can hold on to his faith when his days are numbered literally, then certainly I can, And there have been moments of just such grace. And look, I'm not gonna lie, I still can't make it make sense. I mean, I think about it, I drew myself in 5th grade as a news anchor. Yellow sheet of construction paper, helmet hair, a little box by my head, little squiggly lines. I've loved children. I was everybody's nanny back in the day. I have 3 children of my own. Went to Northwestern. I get my dream job at the Today Show, and now I lose my husband? It's like, what? And then I met him in college. I was he was touring the campus, and I'm like, I'll show you around. He was in high school at the time. I'm like, God, if I would have just come out of my dorm like 1 minute before or 3 minutes after, like, did you know this was gonna happen to me? All those big questions. So I can't make it make sense. But then there are moments where, in the midst of me not being able to make it make sense, my faith takes over. I'm in this room. I have this hot pink book that Clara designed with the white flowers. They see that mommy is still dreaming and still pushing, and I want them to do the same thing. And so, like I said, there's the woman I wanna be. The woman I wanna be is gonna keep dreaming, keep grinding, keep loving, keep laughing. And that's all I can do,
So beautiful.
Oh, wow.
We are going to open it up for questions. I'm gonna pull this.
Y'all are so
iPad up.
fancy here.
I know.
QR code. Grandma used to get so frustrated by these things. She used to be like, well, can you give me a phone number?
So if you want to scan that and then, send over your question. I see everyone saying cameras are up. But I do have one up here so far.
Okay.
Is there anyone that you wish you had included or interviewed but did not have the opportunity to do so, and who would that be?
So I have a bunch of moms that I was going to include, but then life started lifing. I was like, I think 15 chapters is gonna have to be, because I've, Jason Tatum's mom and Usher's mom and Kiki's mom and now. When Michael B. Jordan got his Academy Award, I was just telling Jumi, and he stepped up to the mic and he thanked his mom. I was like, I need to talk to her mama, or his mama. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know where life is going, but there's certainly a place for celebrating us.
Here's another question. This is from Erica. As a mom, what's your favorite way to relax, and how do you make time for you?
That's a fair question. So with this new schedule, we do 2 shows on Wednesday. So Jen and I we're not there live on Fridays. And that has been a game changer in my life because, on Fridays, the kids were really excited about it. I mentioned it on TV, and my little guy, this is safe space, but I mentioned it on the show, and Kyan is 16. He's like, Mom, do you have to say that I was excited that you're home in the morning, I'm like, but you were, So I try to not do that now. They actually pay attention, but they were really excited. I used to pick up Claire from school, and her hair, I would be like, what? Because I'm not home in the mornings, And I'd be like, Uche, what? He was like, she wanted to wear the tutu and the boots and a unicorn puff. That's what she wanted, But now I joke, but I look back and how lucky are they that they had their dad to take them to school every day, But now, I'm there and, anybody want a waffle or anything? But I like being home in the mornings. It's the first time I've ever in their whole childhood been able to be home in the morning. Wow. And then when they leave, I go to the spa. I love me a spa and some serums for my face.
Oh,
Those are my two happy places.
Oh, the questions are coming in. Okay. All right. You are dreaming and doing, and we are so proud of you. Hold on, child. Let me.
I have readers all over the place, but I don't have any right now.
Okay, here it goes. What dream are you willing to share that you wish to still fulfill?
Ooh. Do you guys know Mara Brock-Akil?
Yeah.
She is a producer. She did Girlfriend. What else has she done? Being Mary Jane. I would love to produce some kind of content that is reflective of this space. So I don't know whether it would be, fiction or true or what, but definitely tell a story in that space. My first project, I did a fertility documentary. I had so many of my girlfriends who were fighting to have children. I wanted to tell their stories. And then now I'm sharing the stories of women and mothers, and so, or really anybody. Like I said, some of my favorite folks who poured into me didn't have children of their own. My aunties, Miss Dunklin, my Sunday school teacher, you know what I mean? So it's anybody who nurtures. But I think I would like to do something like that one day.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was that your question?
We, this is a comment. I'm gonna shout them out. We are here to say hi to you from Wichita. Well,
Wichita?
Wichita, my bad. Wichita Heights and Brooks.
Really?
It's Sunny, Lynette, and Shonda. Say hi. There you go.
Y'all live in D.C. now? Wichita. Wow.
Okay, here's another question from, did you talk to your dad about the book as you were writing, and what was his advice?
They are so happy. Life was life for me for a minute. Long before people even knew, when I was writing this book, I was writing, I would get up, I would do the show, I would leave the set, go to, Uche was having chemo, go home, worry about dinner, go to sleep, wake up, do it again. I was doing that for so long. Mm-hmm. My father was really worried about me. They were all worried about me that I was gonna crack, And I got to the point where it was around the holidays and I was cracking because I was worried about, how are we gonna have a holiday and where are we gonna go and how are we gonna do that? And it was Dylan who pulled me aside, and she was like, Sheinelle, like, come on. Like, no one is gonna fault you if you step off the treadmill for a little bit. And I was like, I was trying to get to Christmas. And she was like, no. So I called that day and I said, hey, I think I'm gonna have to take a break. And everybody was just lovely. I thought it would be, I didn't know how long it would be, but it ended up being a bit.
There's another question. As a divorced mom of a teenage daughter, sometimes the mom guilt I have about my parenting mistakes are overwhelming. Can you relate? If so, how do you give yourself grace in those moments? And that's also something you talk about in the book, just like the mom guilt and feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, again, no more. You know, I was so worried about like Clara's clothes, or are they reading at a certain level, or it just doesn't, it's gonna be okay. You know, if I could take one thing away from even my early years of parenting, is the worry and the guilt, you know, because again, I think about my fondest memories. Quite often it was with the babysitter or grandmama or somebody in the village, so it's just not worth it. And as far as divorce is concerned, I'm telling you, my mom, she divorced when I was a baby, and then again when I was in 8th grade, going into 9th grade. And I think I'm all right. I turned out okay. You know, listen, there were hard days. It wasn't easy, but I really do think that she was honest with me. We would have conversations about it. And again, I was shielded from any drama. If I could say anything, it would be to try your best to shield them from the drama. Because if so, we buy what you're selling. If it's, you know what? And I saw her resilience. Long before I could say the word resilience or understand what that was, I felt it. And then now my own struggles, even with, you know, when Uche passed, I remember seeing my grandmother, because she dealt with it a few years before I did, and watching her, you know. So we model things that we see. So I think as long as, in my opinion, you do your best to model the resilience and model those things and be honest with your child, don't worry, it's gonna be okay.
This is a more like a comment, but it's funny.
Okay.
Have you thought about acting? I saw you acting as Olivia Pope the other day. You'd be great. That's so cute.
You know, it's the truth is I did that in 2017 when I was like tiny, like a little amoeba at the Today Show. And so I did it so long ago, it just didn't matter. So it's so funny that we brought it back. And now they're like, oh, you know. But I'm not gonna lie. I was like, really? Was that good enough? Could I do something? I'll do a cameo. It used to be my dream to just, like a character in a movie, sit down and turn on the news and it'd be me. I mentioned it to, what's his name? No, I was about to say Malcolm Lee from Best Man. And he put, yes, and he put me in it. So if you go on Peacock, the second Best Man, not one of those, the one that's on Peacock, I think Nia Long's character, somebody sits down and they turn on the news and he let me do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they say put your dreams out there. So I was like, can you put me in one of your things? And he was like, actually, I will.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I still get like 6-cent checks. Literally 6 cents, never more than like 8 cents. Yeah, are we out of time? Oh, okay.
Oh, we have like a couple more minutes, and then we'll transition over. It says, thank you for writing this book. How do you maintain your village so your kids are taken care of and you can still have time for yourself?
I've had to learn that even more so now. Like even now, they're with their cousin Timmy, or I was having a tough time with with my boys because, you know, our first vacation, I don't know if I talked about it in the book, but it was tough. Another mom, you know, I've met other widows, and one of them warned me, you know, easy with that first vacation because you think, oh, it's just gonna be us, and we're gonna have this great time. And I should have listened because we went away on vacation, and it was awful. Like I found this beautiful place in Miami, and I was like, we're gonna have so much fun. The boys didn't even want to leave the room because they used to surf with their dad, and I can't surf. And, you know, when they play soccer, they would play soccer on the beach. I don't play soccer. And so now, this time around for spring break, I've learned my lesson. I brought their cousin Timmy, and he can go out and do those things. Or, you know, I have to bring in friends, or like it just, you know, I have to call some of the cousins and some of the uncles for spring break. I had the boys go with some of the uncles for a little bit. Like, and I don't ask for help enough, and I'm learning for the sake of my kids, I have to ask for help. And so I am leaning on the village, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There, you know what? Majority of it, y'all are also sweet. It's I am praying for you.
Thank you.
All your sorors are here, and they're so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Mother's Day is coming up, and this will make a perfect Mother's Day gift.
Yay, thank you.
And Sheinelle does the audiobook too. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I signed every single one of them. I signed every book today.
Yes.
Every single
Yes.
one. Yay.
So as a closing question, I would just love to hear, how this book, again, has changed you, and what are you looking forward to in the future with it?
I feel like I've said that this book, no one's asked me that question before. I mean it so sincerely when I tell you that this book is a love letter from me to you. Yeah. And I've said it and I mean it. And I just hope like the woman I never meet opens it. And even if she doesn't have time to read, she puts it by her bed and it just exudes love for her. But what I underestimated, and this book just came out on Tuesday. And what's today? Monday. So it hasn't even been 7 days. What I didn't realize is this book is a love letter to me. Yes. Now I'm gonna cry. Aww. Because I worked so hard on it, and I think, I think Uche wanted us to keep going because for him it meant like we weren't giving up, like it was like our routine was. And so I think it was the therapy that I didn't know I needed, just staying in with it. And I do believe, like even Venus and Serena chapter, like Oracene Price was so tough. Yeah. And her toughness, if you will, when I was typing it was a tough day, I remember. And it was like she was talking to me, and I'm like, okay, I can be tough too, And so I just think it's ministered to me in ways that I didn't see coming. And so, like I said, I can't make my life make sense, but in some ways I'm making it make sense, And I think this is, it's more symbolic than anything. And I love that, I kept looking at all these colors and I was picking the hot pink and I wanted it to be vibrant. And I love that at the last second, Clara was like, Mom, let's make the flowers white. Because when she saw it, I saw her eyes light up. And then you know how every author gets the box and they do the rite of passage where you open up the box. I remember giving it to my kids and watching them. And I tried to, sorry, Drew, for social media, I was trying to do something all fancy with it. And one kid was over here and kind. I was like, what are you wearing? No, we're not putting that on top. But when they opened it up and they flipped to the front page that says to Kai and Clara Josephine and Uche, they didn't look at me. They looked at each other. Oh. And I was like, it was like they had their own little thing that their mom did this. Mm-hmm. And that's everything to me. Yeah. Oh, that's
yeah. Again, we are so, so proud of you. We're just so proud of you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for everyone for coming.
Yeah.